My name is Allison Grant, and I'm 27 years old. On paper, I'm the kind of woman loan officers relax around. I make them lean back in their chairs, loosen their ties, and say, "You're exactly the kind of client we like to see." I work as a graphic designer from home. My days are built around deadlines and revisions, colors, fonts, and clients who swear they only need a few small tweaks and then send an entirely new concept. I don't chase adrenaline. I chase clean files, approved proofs, and the quiet satisfaction of hitting submit and watching the payment clear. Outside of work, my life used to look just as controlled. I share a 2-bedroom apartment in the city with my boyfriend, Mark. He's 25, a marketing coordinator at a startup that thinks free LaCroix counts as culture. We've been together for 2.5 years, living together for the past year. The apartment isn't flashy, neutral walls, sensible furniture that all pass through a spreadsheet and at least one coupon code before I hit order. The lease is in my name. Most of the furniture is mine. The pots, the pans, the knives that can actually cut through a tomato without squashing it, mine too. So is the cooking. Since I work from home and my hours are flexible, I naturally took on most of the meals. Not because Mark demanded it. Not at first. I genuinely enjoy it. I've been perfecting recipes since college, trading late-night pizza for trying to nail the perfect sear on a steak in a sad little non-stick pan. Over the last 2.5 years, I've fed us a lot of dinners, homemade pasta on random Tuesdays, Sunday roasts that made the whole hallway smell amazing. His favorite chicken soup every time he got sick or complained about a long day. I planned our meals around his preferences more than I wanted to admit. I thought of it as love. Last Thursday, that love smacked into a brick wall. My day started at 6:00 a.m. with an email subject line that made my stomach drop. Deadline moved up. A client decided they wanted their entire campaign delivered a week early. Of course they did. From 6:00 a.m. into the evening, I barely looked away from my screen. Layers, exports, proofs, calls. I forgot to eat anything more substantial than coffee and 2 sad granola bars. Around 7 p.m., the apartment door opened. Mark walked in, dropped his bag by the couch, and towed his shoes halfway off. "What's for dinner?" he asked. Not even a hello, just that. I blinked at him over my laptop. "Dinner." "Right, that thing people eat." I glanced at the time in the corner of my screen and felt a dull throb start behind my eyes. The kitchen was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Clean, empty, no smells of anything roasting or simmering. "Sorry," I said, dragging a hand through my hair. "I've been swamped. I haven't started anything. We could order Thai?" For half a second, I expected him to say, "No worries," or "rough day," something human. Instead, his face went cold in this way I'd never quite seen before, like someone had flipped a switch behind his eyes. "Seriously?" he said. "I've been at work all day." "I've been working all day too, Mark," I replied, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. "I just got caught up with this project. We can have food here in like 30 minutes. He dropped his keys on the counter with a clatter that felt deliberate. "Your cooking sucks anyway," he said flatly. "I only eat it to be polite." It was one of those moments where the world doesn't slow down dramatically, like in the movies. It sharpens. Every detail goes into focus. The hum of my laptop fan, the faint ring in my ears, the way his phone screen lit up his face even as he turned away from me. 2.5 years of meals flashed through my mind. The homemade pasta he moaned over, the Sunday roasts he went back for seconds on, the butternut squash soup I made 3 times in 1 week when he had the flu because he said it was the only thing that doesn't taste like cardboard. Apparently, all of that had sucked. I felt something inside me go very, very still. "You're probably right," I said quietly. He looked up, surprised. Maybe he expected me to argue, to cry, to beg him to take it back so I could keep feeding him like nothing happened. "Well, yeah," he said after a beat, shrugging, as if he'd just confirmed a fact. "Order whatever you want. I'm going to shower." He walked down the hall, humming to himself. I stared at the empty kitchen for a long moment, then picked up my phone and opened the delivery app. 1 order of pad thai, for 1. When the food arrived, the apartment filled with the smell of peanuts and lime. I plated my dinner, sat at the small dining table, and ate slowly. When Mark came out of the bathroom in sweatpants, towel over his shoulders, his hair still damp, he looked at the table, then at me. "Where's mine?" he asked. I swallowed, dabbed at my mouth with a napkin, and shrugged. "You said my cooking sucks," I reminded him calmly. "Figured you'd prefer getting your own thing from now on. Didn't want to subject you to it anymore." That's not funny, Allison, he said, frowning. You knew I was hungry. There's an app on your phone, I said mildly. You're good with tech. He stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. You're being petty. No, I replied, meeting his eyes. I'm being considerate. I took your feedback seriously. He scoffed, grabbed his phone, and stomped into the bedroom. I heard him ordering something, cupboards slamming as he hunted for snacks while he waited. I finished my dinner, put my plate in the sink, and went back to my laptop. While my project exported, I opened a different kind of file in my head, one labeled Boundaries. If Mark truly thought my cooking was that bad, then he wouldn't have to suffer through it anymore. The next morning, I woke up early out of habit and drifted to the kitchen. I almost started cracking eggs automatically for 2, but my hands hesitated over the carton. I pictured his face when he said it, the casual dismissal, the way he'd looped "your cooking sucks" in with "I've been at work all day," as if my labor didn't count. I made eggs Benedict, for one. When Mark shuffled out of the bedroom, he rubbed his eyes and sniffed the air. Smells good, he said. Did you make enough for me? I took a slow bite, savoring the runny yolk, the tang of hollandaise. No, I said lightly. Didn't want to poison you with my terrible cooking. There's cereal in the pantry. His jaw clenched, just a little. That's not what You're overreacting, Allison. I'm just respecting your opinion, I said. You were honest. I appreciate that. Day 3, he tried guilt. I didn't mean it that harsh, he said as I ate French toast dusted with powdered sugar while he poured himself a bowl of stale cereal. You know how I get when I'm tired. Right, I said, flipping a page in my planner. Tired enough to tell the truth, I guess. He didn't have a response for that. By day 4, he started making his own breakfast. Burnt toast, runny eggs, knife marks gouged into my cutting board from where he tried to hack an onion in half. He left the mess on the counters like he expected I'd eventually cave and clean it. I left it all exactly where it was. Those mornings, I cooked myself something beautiful for lunch. One day, it was panko-crusted salmon with lemon butter sauce and roasted vegetables, the kind of meal that makes the whole apartment smell like you've hired a private chef. Mark worked from home that day, conveniently. He emerged from the bedroom in the middle of his break, sniffing the air. Wow, he said. That smells incredible. Did you make extra? I plated my single portion and shook my head. Nope, just one serving. He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Allison, come on, you know I didn't mean... Your Uber Eats history shows you know plenty of good places, I cut in, a small smile on my lips. You'll be fine. He ended up spending $18 on a mediocre sandwich. I watched him eat it out of the corner of my eye, while I savored my salmon. By the end of the week, irritation had settled into something heavier between us. He paced more, slammed cabinets louder. His questions about dinner always had a sharp edge now. Sunday night, his best friend Cassidy came over. We'd started a tradition months ago. Sunday dinners at our place. I'd cook something special, we'd open a bottle of wine, and they'd sit around our small table complaining about work while I poured seconds. This Sunday I was making beef Wellington. For one, Cassidy walked in, hung her jacket on the chair, and inhaled dramatically. Oh my God, that smells amazing, she said, heading straight for the kitchen. What are we having? I'm having beef Wellington, I said, brushing egg wash over the pastry. There are menus on the fridge if you two want to order something. Cassidy paused. Wait, just one? Mark hovered in the doorway, his expression a mix of embarrassment and anger. She's being ridiculous, he muttered. I made one comment about her cooking and she's punishing me. One honest comment, I corrected, not looking up. Mark told me my cooking sucks, and he only ate it to be polite. So now I'm not putting him in that position anymore. Cassidy's eyes darted between us, confusion turning into something more like disapproval on Mark. Oh, she said slowly. Seriously? You said that? Mark flushed. It wasn't that deep. I was just tired. I set the Wellington into the oven and finally met Cassidy's gaze. Anyway, I said softly. Like I said, menus on the fridge. There's a great pizza place that delivers. Watching Cassidy do the math as she glanced from the pristine kitchen to Mark's red face was delicious in a way I hadn't tasted before. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about food. Mark didn't like how it felt when someone else saw the consequences of his own words. By the end of the night, he would make sure more people got involved, and not in the way he expected. The first message came from his mom. I was rinsing my plate from lunch when my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number, but the preview showed, "We need to talk about how you're treating my son." I dried my hands, opened it, and read, "Hi, Allison. This is Mark's mom. I don't appreciate hearing that you're starving my boy and refusing to cook for him. A good woman takes care of her man, even when she's upset. This behavior is abusive. I stared at the words for a beat, feeling equal parts disbelief and a weird, cold amusement. Mark hadn't just complained, he'd escalated. I typed slowly, deliberately. Hi, Mrs. Collins. I'm sorry Mark didn't explain it clearly. He told me my cooking sucks and that he only ate it to be polite after 2.5 years. I'm respecting his opinion and no longer forcing him to eat food he doesn't like. He has full access to the kitchen and groceries. I watched the typing bubbles appear, disappear, reappear. That's not what he told me, she replied. He said you refuse to feed him or buy groceries. I actually laughed. We've always split groceries 50-50. I still buy groceries for myself. He's welcome to cook or order his own food whenever he wants. I'd be happy to cook again if he genuinely likes my cooking and apologizes for lying about it for years. Until then, I'm just honoring his honesty. There was a long pause, then, we'll talk about this later. As if I were a teenager she needed to discipline, not the person whose name was on the lease. 10 minutes later, his sister texted, then his dad. Each version was some flavor of, why are you withholding food from Mark? Real women don't behave this way, you're being controlling. To all of them, I sent the same message, copied and pasted. Mark told me my cooking sucks and he only ate it to be polite. I'm respecting his preference and not forcing him to eat food he dislikes. He can cook or order anything he wants. He's an adult. By dinner that night, the campaign had clearly backfired for him. The door slammed harder than usual when he came home. You told my family I said your cooking sucks, he snapped, dropping his bag. I looked up from my laptop on the couch. I told them exactly what you said, word for word. You made me sound like an asshole. You made you sound like an asshole, I corrected calmly. I just forwarded the transcript. He opened and closed his mouth, then stormed into the kitchen and yanked open the cabinets as if they'd done something to him personally. We'd always split groceries 50-50. I handled the shopping, meal planning, and cooking. He just transferred his half of the money when I asked. Before, I'd spend around $400 a month on groceries for the two of us, quality ingredients, bulk buys, staples. Now that I was cooking for one, my bill had dropped to about $150. That night, I handed him my phone with the grocery spreadsheet open. Hey, I said, groceries came out to $150 this month. Your half is $75. He stared at the number like it was personally insulting. 75, he said. Why am I paying $75 when I'm spending $300 a month on takeout because you refuse to cook? I blinked. Because you're paying half of the groceries I bought, for me, that you're welcome to use if you want to cook. I'm not responsible for your takeout bill. That's financially abusive, he said, voice rising. You cut me off from food and then expect me to pay the same? I cut you off from food you said sucked, I reminded him, feeling my patience thinning into something sharp. Your half of the grocery bill went down because I'm not buying for you. If you want to eat what I buy, we can talk. If you'd rather spend $300 on takeout, that's your choice. He stared at me, eyes dark, jaw working. You're unbelievable. Maybe, but at least I wasn't hungry. Week 2 started with Mark deciding he could easily handle cooking for himself. The first night, he attempted spaghetti. I watched out of the corner of my eye as he dumped dry pasta into lukewarm water, turned the heat on high, and then wandered away to scroll on his phone. The smell of burning hit before the smoke alarm did. He'd let the water boil away and scorch the pasta to the bottom of the pot. The top layer somehow remained crunchy. He swore, slammed the pot into the sink, and stomped around in the cloud of steam and blackened starch. You could have told me I was doing it wrong, he threw at me, waving a dish towel under the alarm. I thought you didn't need my help, I said, spooning my own plate of carbonara. Made with fresh pasta, I'd rolled that afternoon, egg and parmesan clinging silkily to each strand. You said it was easy. He ended up eating cereal again. I tried not to enjoy it, but there was a bitter, petty part of me that found justice in the clink of his spoon against the bowl. On Tuesday night, he tried a different tactic. I was at the table, laptop closed, for once, sipping tea. He sat down across from me, folding his hands like he was about to negotiate a contract. Okay, he said with a sigh. I'm sorry I said your cooking sucks. Can we just go back to normal now? The words were right. The tone was all wrong, like he was apologizing for stepping on my shoe, not stomping on 2.5 years of care. Do you actually think my cooking is good? I asked. Or are you just hungry? He hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. Silence pooled between us. That's what I thought, I said softly. I'm good with the current arrangement. His face flushed. You're really going to keep this going? I'm really going to stop doing unpaid labor for someone who doesn't respect it, I said. Call it whatever you want. On Wednesday, he went nuclear. I found out when my phone buzzed with a notification from a mutual friend tagging me in a post. Mark had written a long, dramatic paragraph on social media about how his girlfriend was withholding food as punishment, creating a hostile living environment, and using cooking to control him. The comments were immediate. OMG, dump her, bro. This is abuse. No real partner would starve you like that. I took a screenshot of his post, breathed once, twice, and then typed my response. Hi, everyone. For context, Mark told me, "Your cooking sucks and I only eat it to be polite." After 2.5 years of me cooking almost every meal, I decided to respect his opinion and no longer force him to eat my food. He has full access to the kitchen and groceries and is free to cook or order whatever he wants. I don't control his money or his choices, just my time and energy. Then I muted the thread and went to marinate some chicken. Hours later, when I checked back, the tone had shifted. Wait, so you told her cooking sucked, but still want her to cook? You can't cook for yourself? You're a grown man, Mark. Learn to use a stove. Why do you want abusive food so bad? Mark came home that evening with a storm cloud practically drawn over his head. You humiliated me online, he said, tossing his phone onto the couch. I corrected the record, I said, flipping chicken in the pan. You left out some key facts. You made me look pathetic. You wrote a post saying your girlfriend won't feed you like you're a toddler, I said. I just pointed out you have 2 hands in a kitchen. Thursday, his mother showed up. I was halfway through chopping vegetables when there was a sharp knock on the door. Before I could even reach it, it swung open and she swept in, arms full of grocery bags, her expression tight. Allison, she said by way of greeting, we're going to fix this nonsense right now. Behind her, Mark hovered, looking smug, like he'd called in reinforcements. She plunked the groceries onto the counter, chicken, rice, canned soup, pre-made sauces. A good woman, she began, takes care of her man regardless of silly fights. You don't withhold food. I wiped my hands on a towel, feeling strangely calm. I agree, I said. That's why I'm not forcing Mark to eat food he finds disgusting. That would be cruel. She faltered, thrown off by the pivot. He didn't mean it, she insisted. He was just upset. He hasn't said he was lying, I replied. If he tells me he actually likes my cooking and apologizes, I'll consider going back to how things were. Until then, I'm taking him at his word. She huffed, clearly deciding I was a lost cause, and rolled up her sleeves. Fine, she said. I'll cook dinner for all of us. Mark visibly brightened at that, like he'd won some invisible point. I stepped aside, genuinely curious. What followed was impressive, in a morbid way. She overcooked the chicken until it was dry and stringy, dumped a jar of sauce over it without tasting, and annihilated the rice into a gluey lump. The vegetables were either raw or cardboard. When she finally plated everything, she set a dish in front of me expectantly. Thank you, I said politely, taking in the grayish chicken. But I'm going to pass. I've been working all day and need actual food. I'll make myself something quick. Allison, she snapped, don't be rude. Forcing someone to eat food they don't like is rude, I said gently. I'd never do that to Mark. I pulled out a wok, some leftover vegetables, and in 10 minutes had a vibrant stir-fry, sizzling on the stove. The aroma of garlic and soy and sesame filled the kitchen, layering over the smell of mushy rice and burnt meat. The combined resting bitch face from both of them could have powered a small city. Friday was the potluck. Mark's company did a monthly office potluck, and he'd signed up, as usual, to bring his famous spinach artichoke dip. By his, he meant mine. I'd made that dip for him the first year we were dating. It became a thing. His coworkers raved about it, asked for the recipe, and he'd always say, "It's our little secret," while winking at me. Thursday night, he hovered in the doorway as I cleaned up from my own dinner. So, he said casually, you're making the dip tonight, right? I need it for tomorrow. I didn't even look up from the cutting board. Nope. Allison, he said, exasperated. Come on, it's for work. You know they expect... You want to bring my sucky cooking to your office and pretend it's yours? I asked, finally meeting his eyes. That's not what This is different. How? I asked. You don't like my cooking, remember? He floundered, then snapped. Fine, I'll just make it myself. Great, I said, turning back to the sink. Let me know how it goes. He tried. I'll give him that. The first attempt burned to the bottom of the pot. The second was somehow watery and grainy at the same time. At one point, I heard him curse, and the smell of scorched cheese hit the hallway. Friday morning, he stood in the kitchen, staring at the congealed mess in the pan like it had personally betrayed him. 15 minutes later, he shoved it in the trash, grabbed his keys, and left early. He came home that night seething. How was the potluck? I asked, stirring my soup. He threw his bag down. One of my coworkers follows your cooking Instagram. She recognized the store-bought dip I brought and asked if I'd finally stop stealing your recipes in front of everyone. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. Sounds humiliating, I said softly. He glared at me like this was my fault for existing. What he didn't realize was that humiliation, for him, was just the appetizer. Saturday was when I served the main course. Saturday morning, I woke up before sunrise. The apartment was silent, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and Mark's faint snoring down the hall. I opened my planner and flipped to a blank page. On the top, I wrote in neat block letters, "Dinner for 3. Not 4, 3. That day, I decided to cook like I used to. Not out of duty, but out of pride. Out of reclaiming something he'd ruined. I marinated duck legs for confit, chopped shallots for soup, and whisked egg yolks for crème brûlée. The kitchen filled with the scent of citrus and rosemary. I moved with quiet precision, like muscle memory guiding me through a dance I hadn't performed in weeks. By the time the afternoon light slanted through the window, the dining table was set. Cream linens, gold-rimmed plates, wine glasses catching the glow. 3 settings. When Mark walked into the kitchen and saw the spread, he froze. "Finally cooking again?" he asked, smirking. "For me," I said, "and guests." "Who's coming?" "James and Nicole." He frowned. "Your friend James?" "Mm-hmm. He and Nicole wanted to catch up. I told them I'd make dinner." He glanced at the table, confusion flickering into irritation. "You didn't tell me." "It's been a rough week," I said evenly. "Didn't think you'd want my food anyway." The silence that followed was thick. He didn't ask again. At 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. James, tall and good-natured, greeted me with a warm hug. His wife Nicole followed, petite, sharp-eyed, and, coincidentally, a professional chef. "Smells incredible," she said, inhaling. "Duck?" I smiled. "Good nose." Mark hovered behind them, doing that tight-lipped smile people wear when they're trying to pretend everything's fine. Dinner was elegant and deliberate, each course plated with care, each aroma layered to remind me that this was mine. My skill, my creation, my peace. Mark lingered near the table as we sat. Nicole looked up. "Oh, are we waiting for one more?" "No," I said softly. "The table's set for 3. Mark blinked. "You're serious?" I met his gaze evenly. "You said my cooking sucks. I wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable." A flush crept up his neck. "Allison, come on." "It's fine," I said, my tone calm but final. "There's leftover takeout in the fridge." Nicole's fork paused midair. James looked between us, sensing the tension. So I told him the truth, all of it. How Mark dismissed my cooking after years of shared meals. How he rallied his family, accused me online, and tried to weaponize guilt. By the time I finished, Nicole's expression had shifted from polite discomfort to outright disbelief. "You said that to her?" she asked Mark quietly. Mark's jaw clenched. "It wasn't like that." "It sounds exactly like that," she said. James coughed into his napkin to hide a smile. I served each course, soup, salad, duck, dessert, while Mark sat in the kitchen, silent, eating cold noodles out of a takeout container. Nicole made sure to compliment every bite, her voice just loud enough to carry. "This is phenomenal, Allison. The seasoning, the texture, it's restaurant level." I smiled. "Thank you. I had good motivation." By dessert, Mark was gone, locked in the bedroom. That night, as I blew out the candles, I felt something settle inside me. Not triumph, just clarity. When James and Nicole left, I cleaned the kitchen in silence. The dishes clinked softly under the running water. Behind me, I heard the bedroom door creak. "Allison," Mark said quietly. His voice was rough. I didn't turn. "I was wrong," he said. "Okay, I was wrong. Your cooking doesn't suck. It's amazing. I've gained weight from takeout, spent almost $500 this month on junk, and I miss this." He gestured weakly toward the kitchen, the air still rich with garlic and caramelized sugar. I shut off the faucet. "Are you sorry for what you said?" I asked. "Yes. Or are you sorry for the consequences?" He hesitated. "That's what I thought," I said, drying my hands. He stepped closer. "Please, Allison, let's just move past this." "This isn't about dinner anymore," I said softly. "It's about respect. You didn't just insult my cooking. You lied to my face for years, called me abusive, dragged your family into it, and painted me as some villain online. I was angry, he said, voice cracking. I didn't mean any of it. But you said it, I replied. And you doubled down every time I gave you a chance to stop. He looked at me like I was the one breaking something precious. Maybe I was. For the next week, he tried everything. Cooking classes, canceled after one session, meal prep services, too expensive, moving back to his parents. Lasted 2 days before his mom texted me, please take him back. He's eating us out of house and home. Even seduction. The last card in his deck. But every time he touched me, I felt nothing. Just the memory of every slammed cabinet, every dismissive shrug. Then came the final mistake. One Thursday, my phone buzzed. It was my mom, laughing. Your boyfriend just called me, she said between giggles. What? Oh, honey, he told me you're being cruel and manipulative, that you're starving him and acting like a child. I asked him one question. Did you tell her cooking sucks? He said yes, she snorted. So I hung up. I couldn't help it. I laughed until my sides hurt. When I got home that night, I smelled smoke. The kitchen looked like a war zone. Flour on the floor, 3 burnt pans, something unrecognizable in the oven. Mark sat at the table, red-eyed, surrounded by grocery bags and half-chopped vegetables. I can't do this, he said, voice breaking. I don't know how you make it look so easy. I'm tired and hungry and everything I cook tastes like garbage. So my cooking doesn't suck? I asked softly. He looked up at me, defeated. No, it's amazing. I'm an idiot. I was just mad that day and I took it out on you. Please, Allison, I'm begging you. I leaned against the counter, watching him crumble. I don't think this is about cooking anymore, Mark, I said. It's about how quickly you tore me down when you didn't get what you wanted, about how fast you turned me into a villain. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I'm done, I said finally. Not with cooking, with us. He stared, stunned. You're ending our relationship over dinner? No, I said. I'm ending it over respect. The silence that followed was louder than any fight we'd ever had. He shouted eventually, called me petty, cold, impossible. I didn't respond. I just started cooking dinner. A perfectly seared ribeye, garlic mashed potatoes, grilled asparagus. He watched in disbelief. You're cooking right now? For one, I said, like I have been for 3 weeks. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. He moved out that weekend. Tried to take half my cookware. I had receipts for everything. He left with his clothes, his ego, and his version of the story. Online, he posted about his abusive ex who used food as control. I posted screenshots of his messages and the timeline of his own words. People connected the dots fast. A month later, I was sitting in a cooking class, hands dusted with flour, learning to make hand-cut pasta from scratch. The instructor, a quiet man with a kind smile, stopped by my station. Perfect folds, he said. You've done this before? I smiled. A few times. He grinned. Dinner for one? For now, I said, twirling the dough. But I like cooking for people who appreciate it. He laughed. That's fair. That night, I went home, opened my fridge, and set the table for one. And for the first time in a long time, the food tasted exactly the way it should. Not like peace offered to someone else, but peace returned to myself.